Welcome to Honeybee. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Real stories of love, lies, and betrayal, where every truth stings. Let's begin. Jasmine and I first crossed paths at a mutual friend's birthday celebration in Seattle nearly 2 years ago. It was one of those laid-back evenings where people show up, have a few drinks, share some laughs, and head home without expecting anything life-changing to happen. But that night, she immediately drew my attention. When our friend introduced us, the conversation was effortless. We spent most of the evening talking, realizing we shared similar interests and had a slightly sarcastic sense of humor about modern dating. Before the night ended, we exchanged numbers, and I texted her the next day. Our first official date happened the following weekend. Coffee that turned into lunch, which turned into hours of walking around the city, just talking. It felt so easy in a way dating rarely does. I was 28 then, working at a mid-sized tech company in downtown Seattle. The work was demanding but well compensated and came with a manageable balance. Jasmine was 27, employed at a retail company where she managed social media and coordinated campaigns. For the first few months, we kept things casual, both a bit cautious after past relationships that had escalated too quickly and ended badly. But by the 4th or 5th month, we were spending most of our free time together. By the 6th, we'd met each other's families. By the 8th, it was clear what we had was serious. I own a 2-bedroom home in a residential area about 20 minutes from the city center. I'd been leasing it for 2 years before meeting Jasmine. It was more space than I needed alone, but I liked the extra room since I often work from home. Jasmine, on the other hand, was renting a 1-bedroom apartment close to downtown, and her rent kept climbing, pretty typical for Seattle. She'd mentioned several times she was being priced out of her neighborhood. After 8 months of dating, I suggested she move in with me. It made perfect sense, financially and practically. I already had the space, she'd save on rent, and we were practically living together anyway, alternating between her place and mine. But honestly, beyond all the logical reasons, I just want to come home to her every day. She agreed without much hesitation. We spent a weekend packing and moving her things, and just like that, we were living together. That was 8 months ago. We'd now been together 1 year and 4 months, half of that living under the same roof. And surprisingly, cohabiting was smoother than I expected. We quickly settled into a natural routine. I'd make coffee in the mornings while she got ready for work. She usually cooked dinner since she got home earlier, and actually enjoyed cooking. We divided house chores with little to no fuss. She handled laundry. I took care of dishes and trash. Some nights, we'd watch shows together. Other times, we'd quietly do our own thing in separate rooms. Of course, no couple lives together without occasional friction. She got annoyed when I left my work stuff scattered around. I got irritated when she'd invite friends over with little warning. But those were small things, easily talked through or ignored. Nothing ever felt big enough to cause real damage. We often talked about the future, not with pressure, just naturally. We discussed weddings, whether we'd stay in Seattle long term, and how many kids we might want someday. Lately, I'd started seriously thinking about proposing. I was looking at engagement rings, figuring out what I could afford while making it special. I'd quietly spoken to her sister for hints about Jasmine's taste. I'd even started scouting meaningful spots for a proposal. Jasmine already knew marriage was in our future. It wasn't a question of if, just when. She didn't know I was already planning it. I was waiting for the perfect moment. Something genuine, not forced. Living together had only solidified our bond. Sharing everyday, ordinary life either strengthens a relationship or reveals cracks. For us, it made things stronger. We still had occasional disagreements and moments of frustration, but nothing that made me doubt us, until one specific Wednesday night. That day had been brutal. One of our major systems went down early in the morning, disrupting multiple clients. I spent the entire day working with my team to find a root cause and fix it, under intense pressure from management and endless calls from upset clients. I left work around 7 p.m., exhausted and mentally drained. All I wanted was a quiet evening, a shower, something simple to eat, then bed. But as I approached the house, I could already hear laughter through the door. I walked in to find Jasmine in the living room with two of her friends. I knew them well. They were her work friends, often out together for happy hours or weekend brunch. They were sprawled on the couch, snacks and drinks all over the table, music playing from her phone, laughing at some story. Jasmine lit up when she saw me. "Hey, babe," she called happily, and her friends greeted me too. I returned the greeting with a tired smile. Normally, I like her friends. But after that kind of day, I wanted silence. I started toward the bedroom to change and figure out dinner when Jasmine suddenly called out loud enough for everyone to hear, "Oh, by the way, I'm going on a weekend trip." I froze mid-step, turned around, and slowly processed her words. Still holding my work bag, I walked back toward the living room and asked evenly who she was going with. She replied casually, almost dismissively, that it was just a trip with friends, her eyes on her phone rather than on me. This was the first time I'd heard anything about it. We lived together. She was announcing a trip in front of her friends like it was a last-minute afterthought. The moment she spoke, the mood shifted. Her friends, who had been chatting nonstop, suddenly went silent and started looking at their phones. I firmly told her we should talk privately. She sighed, glanced at them reluctantly, then got up and followed me to the bedroom, already defensive. I set my bag down and asked what this trip was about. She brushed it off, saying she just needed a break, that it was no big deal. I reminded her she'd never mentioned it before. She shrugged, insisting it was just a weekend and didn't need a whole discussion. I explained calmly that finding out like this, in front of her friends, felt disrespectful, like I was being informed, not included. She rolled her eyes and accused me of overthinking. I pushed back, not raising my voice, just making it clear I wasn't imagining the issue. That's when her tone sharpened. She snapped, "You're acting like I need your permission. We're not married." Her words hit harder than she probably intended. I clarified that it wasn't about permission. It was about basic respect and communication. She shrugged again, this time with a colder edge, and said, "Then stop acting like we're married. You don't get a say in what I do." The air went still. She made minimizing comments before, but this time it landed differently. Maybe because I was tired. Maybe because it was so blunt. I looked at her and said quietly, "You're right. We're not married." She seemed thrown off, expecting a fight, but there was no yelling. I simply dropped my bag, changed clothes, and walked into the bathroom. I stood under the hot water for a long time, letting the weight of what she said sink in. When I came out, she was back in the living room laughing with her friends, as if nothing had happened. I ate dinner alone and went to bed early. She came in later, and we slept in silence, backs turned to each other. Friday morning was cold and wordless. We moved around the kitchen like strangers, avoiding eye contact. I didn't make her coffee. She didn't offer any words. I left with a short, "See you later," and that was it. At work, I couldn't focus. Her words replayed over and over in my head. By lunch, I'd made a decision. After work, I went straight home. The house was silent. Some of her things were gone. Her weekend bag, toiletries, a few clothes. She'd left. I searched for a locksmith, found one with good reviews, and booked an appointment. While waiting, I packed her belongings carefully, not out of spite, but finality. I folded her clothes, wrapped her shoes, boxed up her books, kitchen gadgets, and decorations. When the locksmith arrived, he changed every lock, front, back, and side doors. I paid him, got my keys, and arranged her things neatly near the door. Then I wrote a note. "You're right. We're not married, so you don't owe me an explanation, and I don't owe you a home. Take care." I taped it to the largest bag, making sure she'd see it. My neighbor, a kind woman in her 60s, stepped out and asked gently if everything was okay. I told her simply that Jasmine had moved out. She nodded knowingly. The weekend passed quietly. I fixed things around the house, went to the gym, had lunch with a friend. I didn't think about when she'd return. I'd made my choice. Sunday night, around 9 p.m., I heard fumbling at the door, her key not fitting anymore, then knocking, soft at first, then louder. She called my name, confused. I didn't move. My neighbor eventually explained to her that I'd changed the locks and she'd moved out. Through the peephole, I saw her staring at her packed belongings, reading the note, tears streaming down her face as she tried calling me again and again. Each call went to voicemail. She stayed out there a long time, crying quietly until she finally called someone for help. A cab driver came and helped her carry her things out. Before leaving, she looked back at the door one last time, eyes red and swollen, like she still couldn't believe it was over. Then she was gone. The next morning, I woke up to dozens of missed calls and messages from her, ranging from angry to desperate to apologetic. I read them all, replied to none. I blocked her number and went to work. For a couple of days, calls came through from unknown numbers. I ignored them all. By Wednesday, even that had mostly stopped. And just like that, the silence that followed felt heavier than the words that ended us.